Hello, guys. How are you doing? It's been a crazy week. We're living in a crazy world right now. For those of you who don't know, I live in Los Angeles and things are getting pretty damn weird. We're definitely in the midst of some unprecedented outbreak, and I know it's impacting everybody in the country right now. Each day I feel like we learn so much about this coronavirus, and now Tom Hanks and other people that we know and love are getting diagnosed. So, in the tone of everything that's going on, I thought I would do an episode about what happens when astronauts get sick in space and how does the coronavirus impact the astronauts. So let's get started with this week's episode of Back to Space. So before we get into the history of getting sick in space, let's start on what's happening now with astronauts preparing for the coronavirus. So NASA astronauts right now have planned to go to the International Space Station on April 9th. These astronauts are currently not allowed to leave Star City Training Center in Moscow, but guys, this is not abnormal. Crews head to the ISS routinely go into quarantine ahead of missions to prevent infections, but in this case, the quarantine started earlier than usual. In addition, there is a ceremonial tour that takes place customarily ahead of the space launches. This started in 1961. This is a quote: "The crews are not making any trips out, even such traditional ones as visiting the Kremlin Wall and the house of Sergei Korolev on the eve of departure for Baikonur," said Pavel Vlasov, head of Star City. Not just that, but NASA has just announced that they are suspending tours at facilities where astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken undergo training ahead of their flight. And to further limit potential exposure, it's asking its own staff to stay home if they have any feelings that they might be potentially sick. However, taking a deep dive into researching about this topic doesn't make me feel great. The way that infections spread and how viruses and illness behave in the body changes when humans go into space. From the physical stress that comes with literally launching out of this world to living in a confined environment without Earth's gravity, even regular illnesses like colds can be looked at much differently for astronauts. And once they're in space, changes in the stress hormone levels and other physical aspects of spaceflight will cause astronauts' immune system to change. So you basically can have a great immune system on Earth, but a shite one in space. Also, they share very small quarters, and the lack of gravity is making the particles not fall so much. So John Clark, a former six-time crew surgeon for NASA's Space Shuttle program and current associate professor of neurology and space medicine at the Center for Space Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine, did an interview with Space.com, and that is going to be linked below, and he talked a lot about this subject. So he basically said that viruses like the flu or even coronavirus could also be more easily transmitted at the International Space Station. Quote, "The absence of gravity precludes particles settling down so they stay suspended in air and could be more easily transmitted. To prevent this, compartments are ventilated and the air HEPA filters would remove particles." Yucky! Also, they have found that dormant viruses react to the stress of spaceflight, and viruses such as herpes simplex has been known to reactivate or awaken in spaceflight. Crazy unrelated stories about herpes simplex. A woman who was going through menopause started to have symptoms of herpes, but her husband died 15 years before, and since the hormonal changes of menopause, the dormant virus started to surface. Okay, that's crazy, but super off topic, but I thought it was interesting. So, anywho, what would happen if an astronaut tested positive for COVID-19, you might ask? Well, it would kind of be hard to quarantine people in an already small space in space. But our guy Clark is suggesting that if that did happen, then a crew member would be isolated in their sleep quarter while symptomatic and wear a mask for containment. Then they would wipe down surface and stuff, which they probably already do, but maybe a million times more. So we know now how the ISS plans to deal with the coronavirus, but what about when astronauts get sick in space to begin with? Let's start on Apollo 7 in 1968. The crew got colds in space, and they said it had a significant impact on the mission. Wally Schirra came on board with a mild cold and spread it to the other crew members. Then the astronauts ran out of medication and tissues, and then they refused to wear their helmets while re-entering Earth's atmosphere. That resulted in none of the crew flying on another Apollo mission because NASA was pretty angry because they refused to listen to the NASA advisors, but that must have been one heck of a cold. Then there were also difficulties on Apollo 8 and Apollo 9, who also experienced colds after these missions. NASA was like, you know what guys, I've had enough with this. We are going to implement a pre-flight quarantine that called for limited monitor contact contact with other humans to ensure the safety of the crew. I guess we're in that time period where we don't know what's going to happen and what the future looks like, but I hope that I don't have coronavirus, and that way you can stay tuned for next week. This is filmed, as Trump just said, we are in a state of emergency, so I don't know what's gonna roll around the corner tomorrow or the next day before this is released. So just keep in mind that this is changing. This is a ever-changing story, and we're trying to keep the best, and we hope that the astronauts are safe from coronavirus, because I would like to be in space right now. That sounds like a great place to be. But for now, I'll stay in my apartment. Yeah. Guys, stay safe. Good luck to you guys and your loved ones, and I will see you here next week. Thanks everyone so much for watching. Next week's episode is going to be really fun. It's about space fashion. So go ahead and make sure you subscribe, you like this, you leave a comment, so you can get next Monday, you can wake up, hopefully with no coronavirus, and say, dang, I'm going to watch Danielle's Back to Space episode. So make sure you do that. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.